Hi, I'm Eric Ford for Made Here. Wait What, from Boston-based filmmaker Sarah Furie, examines the effects of weight stigma and discrimination in Massachusetts. The film profiles the efforts in the state to change legislation, protecting its residents from discrimination based on body size. You can watch Wait What and other great Made Here films streaming on our website and through the PBS app. Enjoy the film, and thanks for watching.
To younger me, I wish you had the courage to love your body when others didn't. I wish you realized there were more important things than being a size 2, 5, or 10. I wish instead of looking for imperfections, you noticed your strength. I wish you knew you were beautiful.
We're going to start seated. Looks like we're all ready there. Letting the body just slowly increase movement, starting from the neck and head. Inhale, inhale, inhale. All the way up nice and tall. Hopefully you feel a few inches taller. Sun breath, hands meet heart. Let's take another few rounds of sun breath. So it's that connection with the ground, pressing down, leaning back, using the slack of the rope. If you wanted to bend the knee, play with figure 4 on this side.
I have suffered, as others have suffered, from trying to fit into boxes. So for me, body acceptance means being honest. And my work with yoga, my work with More to Love, is really about broadening what I mean by this sense of being honest with yourself. So when I think about body positivity and body acceptance, I care more about us as individuals learning to feel and sense in our true bodies in this moment. I'm Ray Estapa, and I'm the creator of More to Love Yoga. And I'm also an entrepreneur that prioritizes health and well-being for larger bodies. I've always loved moving my body. My favorite thing is actually to stretch. So when I went to a yoga class for the first time, I wish I could tell you it was awesome. It was not. It was a terrible, terrible experience. The teacher, while lovely, was not equipped for a larger body. So I kind of hid in the back, like so many other people's stories. And then they turned the heat on, and like they're speaking this different language, and I just got overwhelmed. I had a panic attack in the class, and I ran outside. Whatever trait is in me, I tried another studio, and I got into the habit of practicing in the back. And I also got into the habit of closing my eyes. And then the deeper I got into yoga and the practice of body acceptance and attunement, I started to teach other people what I was learning. And then eventually I went to yoga school, specifically for the intention of bringing yoga to larger bodies. And then now it's been 8 years of practically every single week there has been a More to Love yoga class.
Entering the More to Love yoga space has been my first true experience in being in a class where it's geared towards a larger body. Prior to that, I've just taken classes at various different gyms and kind of always felt a little bit out of place.
I haven't always been heavier. Like, I used to be really thin, then I was more like average size. And like, since putting on more weight, I have felt really like self-conscious in dance classes because like most of the people around me are, you know, a lot smaller, and I saw this and I was like, this is perfect, like so exciting.
I've been doing yoga personally since I was 7. I grew up in a straight size body. I developed an eating disorder and healed into a larger body, so this is a newer experience for me. But I haven't done a yoga class in maybe over 10 years or so because of that fear of being with thinner, or straight-sized folks. And it has been so freeing to be able to come to a place where your size does not matter and to feel that joy of a community and to practice yoga again.
According to a study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the percentage of overweight adults in the United States has steadily been rising. Despite our population getting bigger, our weight bias is not getting smaller. A Harvard study of implicit and explicit attitudes over time looked at attitudes on disability, age, skin tone, race, sexuality, and body weight. Out of all 6 groups, explicit body weight attitudes showed the slowest change toward attitude neutrality. And implicit bias on body weight moved in the opposite direction, away from neutrality.
I have been fat my entire life, born fat to a fat family. So it has been something that I've quote unquote struggled with my whole life. I think the biggest frustration really for me is that my size is the first thing that you see and the last thing you remember. What you are thinking about me is what you're gonna put on me forever, and I can't shake it. I can't get rid of it. Like, my presence is offensive to a lot of people. Just my existence brings offense. And it's so hard. Now that I really think about it, it's just really hard to just be, because you take up space, but then you don't want to take up space, especially in a city like Boston where you're on the train, right? And you're like, and you're taking the space of 2 people, but you don't want to, and then people are looking at you, and then you don't want to exist, and yeah.
People are quick to jump to assumptions. Just looking at somebody, in anybody, right? We look at them and we make assumptions and we have biases, but I think for people in larger bodies, people jump to such abrasive assumptions very quickly. But I've also kind of learned too that a lot of that comes from how they feel about their own body and how they project a lot of how they feel onto you.
Fear of fatness, it's this fear that one day you could end up in a body that society doesn't like, or your partner doesn't like, or the people on dating apps don't like. It's just this almost disgust, don't get it on me, don't get your fatness on me, it's taking up too much space. And with that comes just hatred, disrespect, disgust. It's all these really gross feelings and really gross actions toward fat people.
In a 2006 study of over 20,000 people in larger bodies, around 70% said they have experienced other people making negative assumptions about them. Other stigmatizing situations include negative comments by children, doctors, family, and others.
Fat people experience a lack of options or choices with how to show up in the world, whether that's losing weight and assimilating to society, what society wants for them, or act out by remaining fat, and especially being fat and happy. Never be fat and happy. But as we go up the scale of small fat, mid fat, large fat, super fat, infinifat, death fat, the fatter you are, the harder it is to assimilate, the harder it is to get along with your thin, straight-sized companions and not be against the rules.
Weight stigma is everywhere. It is woven into the fabric of our society, whether it is overt and someone is literally, unfortunately, maybe talking about someone in a larger body, talking about themselves. The message that is being told is that being thin is superior, and there's something wrong if you are not fitting some type of smaller bodied ideal. And I won't treat you the same if you are not, and you don't get the same answers from me if you are not, and that should be your priority if you are not, and it is your fault if you are not. And that is the narrative that is pushed and has been told and sold to us.
The evidence is clear that weight stigma and discrimination impact on people's lives in myriad ways. Their health, for sure, ability to access competent health care, but also their opportunities in schools, in the workplace. We know that in the workplace there is rampant weight discrimination. And it could be people not being hired, people being fired, people being docked pay, not getting promoted. All of these ways that weight discrimination is holding people back and undermining people's life chances.
Many studies have shown that a worker's weight adversely impacts their wages. In one study, those in larger bodies started with identical wages as their skinny colleagues. But 17 years later, we're making $1.20 less. The obesity wage penalty is worse for women. One study suggests that for every 6 pounds an average American woman gains, her hourly pay drops 2%.
The idea that somebody should be making less of a living wage because they live in a larger body is outrageous to me. Your body size doesn't determine your ability to function in the workplace. People have been mistreated and discriminated against unfairly for either a promotion or getting a position, making a living wage so that they can support their family. And imagine adding more stress on because you cannot make the amount of money that you are entitled to earn based on your qualifications.
Just earlier this year, I was doing a back of the envelope kind of calculation of what percent of the US population actually lives in an area with protections against weight discrimination. And actually my calculation was pretty sobering. It was less than 10% of the country actually benefits from protections against weight discrimination. They live in a place where this has been outlawed. What that means is more than 90% of the country lives in a place where they have absolutely no protection against being fired at work, docked pay, demoted. Most people don't realize they could wake up tomorrow, their boss tells them, I don't like your weight, you're fired, and you would have no way to fight that.
There's sort of an age-old question of whether law pushes society or society pushes law. And this is one of those moments where there's a much better, more robust, more compassionate and understanding appreciation of different body sizes, of health at a variety of sizes, at a lack of healthiness at a variety of sizes. And I think there's also a general understanding that body shaming at any size is not a helpful thing, just period. So Senate 1108 is an act to prohibit body size discrimination. It applies to both height and weight, and it literally does exactly what the title says. It would prohibit discrimination on the basis of body size in a variety of contexts, including education, healthcare, employment, basic government services, et cetera.
Bills can take a very long time to become a law, if they even do. Way back in 2015, Byron Rushing, then a Massachusetts state representative, petitioned an act making discrimination on the basis of height and weight unlawful. Year after year, the bill was moving through the process and being reviewed by committees, but never made its way to the floor for a vote.
So I came in 2019 along with my friend and colleague, Representative Trom Wynn, and the two of us picked up the bill in our first term. And very proud that in that term, for the first time ever in the history of Massachusetts, the bill did garner a favorable committee report.
However, they still did not get the bill to the floor for a vote. 2 years later, they had another hearing.
So November 23rd, I virtually spoke to the Joint Committee in support of this anti-weight discrimination bill. And one of the things that I said in there, which is true, is that when I was diagnosed with COVID in March 2020, I put off going to the hospital for days because I was afraid that they were going to make a big deal about my weight. That is because of the trauma. That is because of the lived and learned experience that going into some settings as a larger body, you're not taken seriously. So I made sure to speak about that experience to the Joint Committee because, one, it's not just happening to me, it's happening to so many people, and the sense that weight shame prevents us from engaging in society.
Unfortunately, again, the bill did not go to the floor for a vote.
So what's happened since that hearing is that the bill was reintroduced. So we met with Senator Roush and Representative Nguyen a few months ago and have just been staying in touch with their offices since then. We always want to be in touch with the legislators about the strength of the bill, but also to offer our support in coordinating the community around the bill. So with only a few days notice for the hearing in Massachusetts, we sort of teamed up with Bigger Bodies Boston, the local organizing group that does a lot of social and community support things for larger bodied folks, to get the word out on social media, to encourage people to testify. We put together some resources to support people in testifying. And then, of course, I and my colleague from FLAIR both testified in support of the bill this week. I am Tigris Osborne, Executive Director of NAFA, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. For 54 years, NAFA has fought for the rights of fat people with a mission of changing perceptions of fat and ending size discrimination. Earlier this week was a joint committee meeting. It was the House and the Senate hearing combined into one. There were a total of 13 testimonies, including the senator, and there were only 2 in opposition. And the testimonies in support of the bill were really powerful. So I feel really good about it this time around. And I think that Massachusetts has a real opportunity here to follow Michigan in setting an example, but to be a much more modern example. And so that'll have different ripple effects as well. So what will happen next is we'll need a round of constituent influence to let the Speaker of the House and the Senate chair know that, like, these are bills we want to see get on the docket for a vote. We have people contacting their own representatives to say, like, hey, what's up with that bill that Senator Roush and Representative Nguyen are doing? You signed on to that, right? You're going to co-sponsor that, right? You're going to call for a vote on that, right? It is kind of a situation of sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so we just got to squeak louder than we've ever squeaked in the past. That's what it is. We just got to get louder than we've ever been in the past. So I think we're more ready than we've ever been at both NAFA as an organization and fat activists, fat liberation community as a whole.
I think just putting this in place, I don't think it's going to solve everything, of course, but I think it's a step in the right direction where we talk about these things a little bit more.
I truly believe that body love is contagious. Just like any other, social disease or triumph, humans are wired to connect, and we mimic and we follow one another. So if you want something different in the world, you gotta do it on yourself first. And it's the self-work that is the most important for this. So learning how you actually talk and treat yourself, your own views, taking time to maybe question or challenge things that you just assumed or have always carried with you, that is ultimately the first step.
Self-compassion can be a really integral piece in terms of like finding a peaceful relationship with your body, because you're not always going to feel good about your body. That's just kind of that's real at the end of the day. You're going to have days where you're like, yes, this is me and I'm doing well. And you're going to have days when you're like, I just need to exist today. And that's okay, because it is about kind of being able to be at peace with yourself and like also allowing that attitude to kind of like permeate the existence.
It starts with just like talking about experiences and listening to other people's experiences. With anything that I've been unsure of or judged, if I learn more about it, I'm like, oh, like I see this in a whole new light. And to also not only respect our differences, but to like celebrate and embrace them, I think is an even further step, right? Like the first step is neutrality. The next step would be like truly embracing and celebrating it.
We need to create safe spaces for folks in larger bodies by, learning and unlearning some of these things that we have been taught throughout our lives. We see a lot of things through the weight normative lens, the weight focused lens. And so really expanding our reading, expanding our media consumption to things that are more weight inclusive, maybe body accepting, body positive.
Social media these days is essentially a cesspool of fat shaming, of weight stigma, of predatory diet industry companies and influencers trying to make a buck off of discrimination and stigma. I mean, more and more comes out every day about how these companies, the social media platforms, keep allowing these kinds of predatory influencers and companies and other kinds of hate speech, really, to proliferate online.
I highly recommend that you just start unfollowing the accounts that make you feel icky, especially about your body.
Are you following a bunch of influencers who are like drinking black tummy tea, or is there a lot of plastic surgery popping up on your page? And if that's the case, maybe unfollow. And there are settings that you can put in your social media to not see these things anymore. You can say, don't show me things like this. And maybe seeking out those more weight inclusive resources on a social media feed. So then now your algorithm might change.
Bestie, we have to stop comparing ourselves to other people. Yeah, flowers are pretty, but so are sunsets, and they look nothing alike.
I think that we think a lot of times that if we don't have like 100,000 followers on Instagram, like we can't make a difference. But even if you have like 1,000 followers, if you have 100 followers, you're making a difference just by sharing other people's voices who are doing the work of breaking down body-based depression.
It's time to stop taking shots against our own team. Yeah, I said it. It's time for us to gather all our players over to our side and stop hating on ourselves. Stop being so mean to ourselves. Stop not being a friend to ourselves. Stop not being a fan of ourselves and a fan of our team, okay?
Advocating for fat people in the real world is just as important as sharing any sort of content online. For me, when I have friends who ask if there is accessible seating, or they just think ahead, and that makes me feel so much more wanted there and so much more comfortable. I remember I went to my friend's wedding a year or two ago, and these chairs looked like they were made out of toothpicks, and I was terrified. And I was like, I don't want to bug her. It's her wedding day. But I was like, if I fall through this chair on her wedding day, this is going to be awkward too. So I went over to her and I was like, hey, these chairs look like really not sturdy. And she was like, oh my God, I already saw them. And I talked to them. They're rated for X pounds. Is that okay? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Thank you for already asking. She was like, I was so concerned too, because they looked like they would just fall apart. And the fact that she made it comfortable for other people as well just was 10 out of 10, 15 out of 10.
I think people of any size can employ some things to make the world better for fat people. One of those things is just looking around you and noticing how the world is set up in ways that do not accommodate fat people. You don't have to be a fat person to be the person who says to your office, hey, we should have some armless chairs around here because bigger people come into this space, right? You don't have to leave that for your fat colleague to do. And that goes across the board to all kinds of things. It goes to everything from you're getting married, are your bridesmaids gowns being purchased from a place that has larger size clothing, or does that bridemaid have to pay $100,000 extra for a custom gown? You're going shopping with your friend who's larger. Don't only go to a place that has a tiny plus size section in the back dark corner of the store. All of those kinds of advocacy things you can do all the time. It's just turning on that lens to think about, if you haven't thought about it, why don't more fat people work at your job? Is it because they just don't happen to like your industry, or is it because there's gatekeeping in your industry that keeps fat people out? All of those kinds of things, once you turn that lens on, you can be a good advocate for fat people as a fat person advocating for yourself, or as a good member of the community advocating for accessibility for other people.
I had often told other people, you should just tell the doctor you're not going to be weighed. Just tell them you're not going to be weighed. But I hadn't done it myself. Then it was about 5 years ago I realized And that's kind of uncomfortable to do, but if I'm going to tell other people to do it, I need to do it myself. So I did. About 5 years ago, I started saying, I don't get weight. I don't do that, and this is the reason why. That didn't stop them from asking me the next time, and the next time, and the next time. But eventually, I think they wrote it in my chart, because they did stop asking about it. But what was most instructive for me is that I needed to live that experience of what it's like, and realize that my doing that would be so important, so that in that office, anyone else who came in and maybe was afraid to say something, that it would help create the space for others to be able to do that too.
Also, just making fat friends wherever you are, whether that's online or in person or at work or at school. Everyone deserves friends. Everyone wants friends. I believe that it's one of the hardest things to make friends as an adult, especially as a fat person. Like, you already think that no one wants to like engage with you because you're fat. Like, make friends with the fat people.
The people watching this, and you yourself, and every resident of this Commonwealth has a voice. And every single person in this Commonwealth is part of this democratic process. Small d democracy necessitates involvement of you and everyone watching, and then some. If you want to move a bill, it's not going to move because I want it to move, or because Representative Wynn wants it to move, or because of any small handful of legislators. It only moves when a majority, and oftentimes a supermajority, want it to move. And the way you get a supermajority of legislators to want something to move and to elevate it to a position where it needs to move is by all of you reaching out to your own personal state representatives and senators, asking them to sign on to the bill, reaching out to legislators who are in key leadership positions, the chairs of the Judiciary Committee, saying, please schedule this bill for a hearing. Here's why this bill is so important to me. Reaching out to the Senate President and the Speaker of the House and people in other positions of leadership in both chambers to say, please move this bill to the floor. Body size discrimination is one of the last remaining legal bastions of outright abject discrimination in the nation. And we can fix that here in Massachusetts.
There's not a bill on earth that can prevent people from having discriminatory attitudes or from engaging in discriminatory actions. What it can do is it can incentivize institutions not to discriminate. The threat of punishment for discrimination is quite an incentive. We shouldn't need that. People should do the right thing in the first place, but that is not how the world works. So it can provide some incentive. It can provide some recourse to you if you have been discriminated against. But just the fact of that, the fact of knowing that your person, your identity is now indicated to the community that it is illegal to discriminate against you, is symbolically huge. It also just creates a shift in the cultural narrative. What the government sanctions sends a message to people, and what it disallows sends a message to people.
Let's rub the hands in front of the heart, opening up the eyes. Take a look around at your fellow lovelies, extending this kindness, this loving kindness out to one another. That's all we need to do in the world. Anything bonus is just nice to have. Bring it back onto yourself. Big breath in, let it go.
Vermont Public, partnering with local filmmakers to bring you stories made here. For more, visit vermontpublic.org.